Hello and welcome to our next module. In this module, we'll be reviewing the different types of committees we find in Congress. Now again, committees are, that's where most of the work is done in Congress, okay? So let's get started. So the bread and butter of all the committees is your standing committee. Permanent and specialized. You do most of the work on legislation, make recommendations on bills. The majority party holds the majority of the seats. Chairs are members of the majority party, and again, most are divided in subcommittees. Now, when it comes to standing committees, not all committees are created equal. Okay, the rule of thumb is the more a committee deals with money or rules, the more powerful it is, and it takes members of Congress a while to work up to be assigned to these committees, let alone have some leadership position. And again, the majority party holds the majority of the seats, roughly in ratio to what they have in the general chamber. All right, and again, most are divided into subcommittees. One quick note about this. Now, when we think about a bill, and some of you, I remember from if you remember from your childhood, Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill, I'm only a bill, you know all that. Well, the way the system is set up, most bills just kind of die in committee. All right, very few in general. Most legislation does not get passed. All right, and legislation cannot go from one Congress to the next. So once you go through an election cycle, anything that hasn't been passed and sent to the president for signature, you got to start over with the next session. So a bill in general has to pass, both houses, same form, before it can be sent to the president for signature to become law. But part of that process is the committee process. And so a committee, a bill can die in committee, it can come out of committee, not be recommended to the general house. A lot of different things can go wrong. The moral of the story is it takes a lot for a bill to make it through the committee phase, let alone both chambers, same form. All right. Second kind of committee, select committees. They're usually temporary. They examine new or special areas of legislation. They have the same power as standing committees. However, they can't receive bills or report to the floor of the House or Senate. So again, just think for a second some of the issues of the day that we might be dealing with that Congress hasn't dealt with in the past, examining new or special areas of legislation. All right, just think about that. That's where a select committee comes into play. Okay, next kind of committee, type of committee, joint committee. Okay, comprised of members of the House and Senate, address issues requiring coordination. They only investigate and recommend, rarely allowed to bring legislation. Now, this is what I want you to consider for a minute. All right, we've talked in previous modules about the differences between the House and the Senate. Well, let's back up just one step further. Think about the separation of powers we talk about. The Supreme Court, White House, and Congress. But within Congress itself, there's really separation of powers. You have the House and Senate that are really independent bodies that have to coordinate together to pass legislation before it can be sent on to the White House for signature to become law. And so, from that standpoint, think about where you work. What if you got the accounting department over here and manufacturing over here? How do they coordinate? They're really two separate departments of the same company, but you probably have some experience with that. All right, so the same is true here. That's where joint committees come into play, addressing issues requiring coordination. Okay. Now, there is a special kind of joint committee, a special kind of joint committee called a conference committee. The joint committee is formed. Is a joint committee formed to work compromise versions of bills passed by the House and Senate. All right. In general, there's one little exception we'll probably talk in a future module, but in general, this legislation has to pass both houses, same form, before it can be sent on to the White House for signature to become law. All right. So again, this is a mechanism to coordinate between the House and the Senate to hammer out a single piece of legislation, as opposed to just have it going back and forth, bounce around like a tennis ball. All right. So with that, that's an overview of the committee structure of Congress. Again, as always, you can go back and review this, pause, start as needed, and we'll see you in the next module. Thank you.